Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light. Every week we read both from the scripture of the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita as prescribed by Paramahansa Yogananda Ji and as directed by his Guruji, Sri Yukteswar, who is also directed by Babaji to write his book, The Holy Science, that is also based on both scriptures. This week is titled, The Law is Perfected in Love. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, we read, The law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Grace means the power to rise spiritually. Truth means the experience of divine realities, not the application in the outer world of that inner experience. Divine love is the soul's experience of oneness with God. Kindness is the human manifestation of that love. Grace is deeper than mere kindness. Wisdom is divine experience. Justice to all is a human law, though divinely inspired. It follows as consequence of the experience of wisdom. Truth goes deeper than mere justice. While following the law, we should strive always to trace it back to its origins in the vision of God. Therefore, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita urged the devotee not to be satisfied with spiritual precepts alone, but to go beyond them to the direct inner experience of the truth. In the 18th chapter of that great scripture, he says, Nay, but once more, take my last word, my utmost meaning have. Precious thou art to me, right well beloved. Listen, I tell thee for thy comfort this. Give me thy heart, adore me, serve me, cling in faith and love and reverence to me. So shalt thou come to me, I promise true, for thou art sweet to me. And let go those rights and writ duties, fly to me alone, make me thy single refuge. I will free thy soul from all its sins, be of good cheer. Thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken through mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This one is entitled, Slip thy little dewdrop into thy great lake, not to become lost, but to merge into oneness with thee. Teach me to be a dewdrop enchanted with divine love, slipping unaffected down the lotus leaf of seductive sense lures to thy glistening waters of wisdom. I am thy immortal dewdrop, sliding freely and not adhering to the leaves of past, present, and future lives. I smoothed the slopes of my mind with wise restraint, that the thirsty pores of temptation might absorb none of my strength. I am thy prodigal dewdrop, quivering in the hollows of life and death, waiting to slip down, when it can, to thy shoreless sea. Though long truant, I, thy tiny dewdrop, am homeward bound, however long the journey take. After this rhythmic dance of life, rising with birth and sinking with the downbeat of death, I will refresh myself at last in thy unmoving sea. I do not want to lose myself. Thy tiny dewdrop craves only, by merging in thee, to feel that I am one with all the other drops in thy ocean. I will be a rainbow-hued dewdrop, one with thy omnipresence, and yet, in my omniscience, aware of my former dewdrop existence. I pray that all God-thirsty souls will come and drink from the great source of all our lives. This is such a helpful topic this week even the title alone, if you can remember nothing else from the reading or from the talk, of course I'll feel sad because I would have offered as much as I could, but still, the title, The Law is Perfected in Love. Balancing these two thoughts of law and love, with love being the ultimate fulfillment of the law. Why does this need to be said? Well, for so often, the law is thought of as being imposed lovelessly. This has been something that you'll find. There was a story Swamiji liked to tell that it's basically in the form of a joke that a man came before a judge and the judge said, "How do you plead?" And the man said, "Your Honor, I plead for mercy." He didn't say, "I didn't do it." He said, "I did it, but look, help me out here." And in fact, this concept of the law and judge, one of the reasons why it's emphasized in the reading, and we see it not just in the evolution of religion, but also in the evolution of our own thinking, that the religion that Jesus arrived in the midst of had as its focus that God was a judge, that you had to follow the rules or else that's it. And we can get caught up in that thought very easily if we get too hung up on this concept of karma. This happened because it's my karma. This happened because I must have done something equally bad for this thing to happen now. And sometimes people even say, very unkindly, that it happened because of your karma or because of your ancestors' karma and so on. Don't ever say that, because guess where the karma comes if you say that? It doesn't go out the finger, it backfires. Master said, whenever we're too harsh with people, we doom ourselves to live through their experiences, whatever we're judging. He said, if we're judging somebody, not just harsh, but if we're judging, we sit in judgment. We appoint ourselves the judge and say, he says, then you doom yourself to live through their life circumstances, those of whom you disapprove so uncharitably. So he gives us that first hint, not to be uncharitable. Be charitable. In other words, be open-hearted, be charitable. Hi, I didn't see you there. To be patient with people, to be accepting, to say, look, if nothing else, none of my business. Okay? Because as soon as we sit in judgment, someone else is going to be looking to either sit in judgment over us or to topple us off of that so that they can be the judge. And the thing is, nobody is higher or lower than anybody in this world except the saints. And all they are the graduates. And that's what we're all trying to do, is graduate. And in fact, as Master said, you can think of all people as waves of different heights. Little waves, middle waves, big waves. And he said, the saints are the little waves, because they are not wanting to be separate from the ocean of God, whereas the egotistical people are the big waves, pulling themselves away from God, trying to see how big I am, crashing against other waves in the process. But what happens to a big wave? Big wave and then big dip, big trough that comes after it. So as he said, be a little wave trying to merge in with the rest of the ocean, just as the Whispers from Eternity poem was sharing. So this thought of God as a judge, when Jesus came as an avatar, all the avatars come throughout history to provide a correction, to provide an adjustment, but also to provide a new way to find God, a way that's needed now in this time, whatever time they come. And so his explanation of God, because as you may know, God is our Father. That's a correction to say God is not a judge only. God is not a judge who doesn't even know you. You come before a judge and he says, Yara. But you come before Appa and he doesn't say Yara, hopefully. And so your father, again, the ideal father, is not a stranger to you, is inclined. You could say, yeah, but fathers can still be pretty tough. Well, wait, we're coming to that. But first of all, if you belong to the judge, to God, he's obviously going to have patience with you in a different way, show a little sort of care for you. He knows your whole history. You don't even have to say anything. And this story is this point is beautifully given in a story that we usually read on one Sunday of the month, but last year we skipped it. And so I wanted to just mention it briefly. It's called the story of the prodigal son, which means the wayward son, or the son who left, or the naughty son. And Master again uses that word in this poem, the prodigal dewdrop. And this son, so the story goes, lived in a wealthy house, and he was just kind of a wild man. And he said to his father, "Why don't you give me my portion of the inheritance early and let me do what I want with it?" And so the father did. There's also a good son in this story too, who stays with the father. But the wild son went off, and they said spent his time in riotous living. Such a great phrase. You can only imagine what kind of riotous living he enjoyed. But he went on. He spent the money, he had a good time, and then suddenly he found no money, suddenly no friends anymore, as soon as the money's gone, no health, no security, nothing. And so he suddenly was struggling just to feed himself. And so he was, whatever town he found himself in, he was working really hard. And I think he was even like eating, trying to fight with the animals over what to eat and so on. Let's not go too deep into it. But he was struggling. It was not just dosa and idli. And so he had the thought that, here I am struggling on the street, and the workers in my father's house, the servants, eat better than this. And so let me go back to my father's house and just apply for a job. Because he had enough sense to realize that he had done wrong. He was too ashamed to go and say, "Take me back and maybe I could have the other half of my inheritance." Thank you for getting the joke. So, and then he said, "No, I'll just go and I'll apply for a job. And then just say that I don't deserve anything more, but I would like to not have to be fighting it out with the cats and the dogs and so on." So he went back to his house. And as he was approaching, so it said, his father ran out to meet him and hugged him. They say, and fell upon his neck and kissed him, which is a nice thing. It fell upon his neck, hugged him, not anything else. And he said, "Father, I'm not fit to be your son after what I've done, but just let me work for you." And the father says, "No, let's have a big feast. Welcome back. This was my son who was gone, but now is returned home." And he was brought right back into the family. And so of course, the moral of the story is not to ask for half the, But the point is, and remember, a lot of the stories that Jesus told were just like in the scriptures. They're in the Vedas, or in the Shastras. They're stories that have a hidden message. It's not just literally, okay, great, well, so, now we have a history lesson. It's that God is so happy when we turn back. And though we have violated the law, which means we have accumulated karma by wrong action, everybody has. So, what's the big deal? That's sort of like when we have lessons to learn. When a child is born and has lessons to learn, and it says, e, and you don't just go, ooh, come on, what's the matter with you? Have you forgotten from last life? We all forget. We all start over again with things to learn. But we also start over with a hint, a desire, a yearning for God, those of us who have been searching. And those of us who haven't been, we have a hint, a yearning for peace, for love, for happiness, for joy, for something. And we may think, it'll be found once I get that thing. And we find over and over again as we get that thing, and it does not last, the peaceful feeling, that there must be something else. And eventually that something else becomes God. That's where everybody is headed. That's where we are all headed. So the thing to remember is that God is not petty like people are. Someone can see something that you've done wrong and go, And that's fine. In other words, we should understand that if whatever we can do better, we should do. But as Swamiji said in the affirmation, do our very best and then leave the worrying to God. Leave the rest to God. Because again, we're all equal as His children. And so anybody who acts higher than that, they may be higher outwardly in some organizational hierarchy, fine. They may be higher in the sense that they may be a parent who has a responsibility to a child. That's a real thing. But at the same time, we're all equal. We're all children of God trying to find our way. And if you don't believe me, just wait till the next life when you get to be the third standard teacher of your third standard teacher. You see? All these kinds of sweet little revenges we can have. But then revenge is enacted upon us in the next life. So it's better not to think in those ways. But the most important thought of all is just, I am trying to love God more. That is what the law is for. Sometimes people can read the yamas and niyamas and get uptight. Similarly, in the Bible, there are the 10 commandments. And Master said, I don't like that word commandment, as if it's sort of, again, God as a judge giving these laws. He said they should be given as the 10 rules of eternal happiness. He said it's for our own benefit that these are given. And the yamas and the niyamas the same. It's not, these are the things you're doing wrong. These are the things you have no hope of doing. Someone said to me not long ago, in this modern day, it is difficult to follow these things of yoga just as they're given. And I smiled and I told him, listen, I've been hearing in this modern day ever since the 1980s. And 50 years from now, people will be saying, in this modern day, it's nothing like 2023, let me tell you that. It's all just the same, really. I mean, whatever lifetime we live, we have headaches, we have, peace, we have lack of peace. The human condition, I'm convinced, remains more or less the same. It's what we do with ourselves that makes the difference. And everything we do should be guided towards loving God more, and in that love of God, trying to share His joy with others. Yes, we can try to share His love with others, but it's tricky because that can so easily become personal. In fact, Master said that in the beginning it's better to seek God for joy rather than for love. And joy is a lot of what people want to get from love. They want to feel loved so that they can then feel joy. They want to feel loved so that they can feel security. That's one thing mentioned. That was the affirmation for today, interestingly. Because think about it. If you want love or you're seeking love or feeling there's not enough love, it's not the concept of love, or that we can write down so-and-so, in my family loves me, and you have like a scoreboard. I have 16 people that love me. Excellent. I'm looking for 17. It's not some abstraction. It's that feeling. It's the feeling of love. It's how our heart feels when there's that connection. And again, a lot of people start out on the spiritual path trying to seek that love in other people, or mourning the fact, feeling sad about the fact that love isn't coming from other people. But it's really God's love alone that always satisfies, that's always there, that's always understanding. Swamiji said, Master is on my side in every struggle against delusion. He always understands me. And so we have to have that same approach towards Master, towards God, that trust. God knows everything. God is trying to help us. We should do our best. There's a satisfaction in following the law. And what I mean by that is the law of God. Follow the outer laws too. I'm not saying disregard them. The police won't be waiting for me at the end of this talk as I exit the premises. But still, understand that love is the highest law. So what does that mean, and how do we do it? One thing to remember is the peace and the joy that we want can always be found inside ourselves with God. Meaning, no one can take it away. No one can withhold it. If they withhold their approval, that's nothing. What does that matter? I mean, think about us if we had to approve or disapprove of everything so perfectly. I mean, how would this universe even function? You see, it's not up to anyone to be the judge of anyone. Now, that doesn't mean you go home and say, it's not up to you to be the judge of me and I'm ready for a fight finally. You've got to be savvy. You have to be smart. Harmony is also a rule. But in yourself, never accept anyone's disapproval or your imagination of their disapproval or their literal, to your face disapproval. It doesn't matter. As Swamiji said, as Dharmini read in the Living Wisely, Living Well, you could say to them or to yourself, my goal is perfection. Thank you for the reminder that I have more to work on. I would add that you also... No, don't say that. Don't say that part. But just to feel that God never judges me. If God really judged us that way, all the population would just be ashes. Nobody measures up, and that's okay. As Master said, or Swamiji said, why would God he goes through all this trouble to create Maya, to fool us. And so he makes all these traps, hides them with arrows that says safety and happiness this way, and it's a big pit covered up with a little bit of straw. And when we fall into the pit, why should he get mad and say, what's the matter with you? He set up the whole trap, the whole game. Of course he knows. Why did he do it, you could ask, and the answer very briefly is because he wants us to seek him beyond these appearances. You could say, but why that? Okay, that's a different week. We have to cover that. So, again, remember that no one can really hold the law over anybody else unless they're a saint. And the saints can do that, and they never do. The saints, out of their experience of that love and joy, want to share it. Again, as Master was saying in Whispers from Eternity, I want to share it with everyone. And so the saints, having found that, instead of saying, see, it's mine, or see how great I am, they say, you can do it too. They come to help us all. And so if that's what people do at the highest, anybody who's not doing that, well, anyway, never mind. Don't take it too seriously. And let us not sit in judgment of other people. As Swamiji said, even if devotees judge other devotees unfairly, as if to say, look, that's not much of a devotee, is the phrase he used. And he wrote, shame on us if we judge anyone. He said, we have to understand it's not easy to be a devotee in this world right now. It's not just demands on our time. It's not just material desires or whatever. It's also because it's at the beginning of an age, the beginning of Dwapara Yuga. It's 300 years into it. Seems like it's, how long is this beginning? But anyway, it is still the beginning, and it's chaotic. There's turbulence. There's a lot of upheaval until finally Kali Yuga will be put to bed. But not yet and not quietly. But again, that's another subject. So let us not sit in judgment. Let us find... Swamiji said Master was always like this. There would be someone who had such a difficult personality and caused trouble to everyone. And Master would say, oh, but he's such a good father to his children. Or, she's very loyal. Or, she's a very sharp intelligence. Or he'd always have something that, yes, she does have a sharp intelligence. And I can show you the scars that I have from being stabbed by her sharp. And no, he always found something nice. It's not that he didn't see. Of course he saw. He himself said, if a person is friends with you and you always think of them fondly, but if once they do one strongly bad thing against you, is the way he put it, he said, you will say that person is bad. He said, that's not fair. He said, it's like having a piano with one key that's not tuned correctly. Don't say the whole piano is bad. Just fix the one key. He said, I don't like it when people say that person is bad. And so it helps us. It's a protection for us when we don't put that energy out, because then we have a stronger aura when that energy tries to come back at us. But remember also that we are, leave the judging to God. We are not responsible for anyone. And no one is responsible for us. So if someone has a strong opinion, they're welcome to it. So what? As Swamiji said, if people are thinking badly of you, you might say, how nice of them to think of me at all. It's wonderful the way he puts things. So what we want to do then is say, what can I do to love more? And one thing that I found is very effective for this is just to do Kriya. If you don't have Kriya yet, you can meditate with the other techniques and work towards Kriya. And if you have Kriya, just do more Kriya. I've tried a lot of things when dealing with a difficult situation. Introspection, reading the scriptures about it, reading which is to say, The New Path, the autobiography of a yogi, are scriptures, and talking to people about it. All of these things are helpful. I'm not trying to diminish any of them. But I found what is the most effective, as Lahiri Mahashai said, is to try to do Kriya to work through that problem. Whether it's a karma with myself and the other person, whether it's a karma in myself, which it always is, that's whether it's another person or not, it's always ours. It's coming up for release. That's why it's up. Swamiji said you may find when you're doing Kriya that you feel like, my gosh, there's all this trouble going on, and maybe this Kriya is bringing up this karma. But even if so, he said, just do a little more and then it'll go. And when we find that life is attacking our sadhana, that is just the time when we need to do more sadhana. Now, what I mean by more sadhana is more than zero sadhana. Because people will take that as, well, I can't even meditate half an hour, and I should be meditating 3 hours, so I'll meditate no hours. So, in other words, it's meditation that will burn that karma up that's coming to you externally. Anything that comes to us externally is a reflection of what's going on internally. Now, please understand that in the right way. It's an opportunity, it's an obstacle for us to grow through. It doesn't mean if harsh behavior is coming at us, it's because of a harshness inside of us. It may be, but very often the need is just the opposite. The need is to be patient when things are unfair. Anybody can be patient when things are fair. 5 people in line, I am number 4, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Fine. I can be patient. It is my turn. I was walking up to buy something in the movie theater in Delhi, and when we used to live there, and we had learned in Delhi that you have to stand with your elbows out like this. You have to sharpen the ends of your elbows to swing at anybody who tries to get by. And I put my hand out to offer. I figured, and if I offer the money to the cashier, as soon as they have to have my money, they have to take my order. And as I did this, a person, he snuck his arm under my arm over like this to give his money first. And you always have a sense of who you are spiritually when you have an unexpected situation like that. And what is your immediate reaction? And mine was not, please go ahead, I'm sure your need is greater than mine. My reaction, I said, no way! And I pushed his hand away. And then he looked at me and he smiled. Just like, oh, well, I guess you win this time. I don't know. So anyway, I needed to do more Kriya, obviously. So, when things are unfair, that's when we want to practice patience. Because things are really never unfair ultimately, because they're always coming with love. It can be a hard test sometimes. But God wants us to be free. Why? Because we want to be free. Who doesn't want to be happy all the time, regardless of other people's behavior? Don't we all? Don't we all want to be happy, whether things are going well or not? Because things do go well, and then they are not. They go well and then they don't go well. That's the nature of Maya. It's like Swamiji said in the reading, Dharmini said, it's like I guess it was in the affirmation, asking a wave not to move. The waves move. The waves of life move. But in our hearts, ultimately, the more we have of God, the less we move. The less our love, our peace, our security is thrown off. So let's embrace the law in that way. Let's embrace others in that way. It may be that the best way to be loving towards others is to be distant from them for a while. Seriously, it's not just that they irritate us, it's that we irritate them. You say, but all I am is kind and patient and I pray for them. Yeah, that's irritating to some people because you're pointing out to them what they should be doing and they don't want to. And so it irritates them because our trying to grow and be patient presents a challenge. Not always. Some people will take it in the right way and say, as one person said to me recently, that their relative said, "You've changed." You know, one daughter was really giving it to her mother, and in the middle of it said, "You've changed," because her mother was calm and wasn't just getting into the same old thing. This song, "Love is a Magician," that we sang, I wanted to just echo what Dharmini was sharing about the song. These are different comments that Swamiji made about this song. And often he had said that this was his favorite among all of his songs. And one of the last ones he wrote, not like in the last year, but in the last, 7 years of his life, he wrote it. And someone once compiled a list of questions, interview questions, to give to potential interviewers that they could ask to Swamiji. And she gave the list also to Swamiji. And when he looked at the list, one of the questions was, "Looking back on your life, what do you feel is your most significant accomplishment?" And Swamiji answered that. He said, "Love is a magician." That's this song. And then another question, "With all the things that you do, what brings you the most joy?" And Swamiji answered, "Sharing God's love with others." This song, as you might have heard in if you're familiar with Swamiji's songs, the music, the chords are a little bit different. And when Swamiji was asked about the message of this song, and especially the message of the jazz chords, is one way to put it, he talked about the yearning and the spiritual path. That, as Dharmini was mentioning, that yearning, that longing for God. And think also, he said, of the joy of communion that follows the yearning. Another message of the song, he said, is the long wandering of the soul through endless incarnations. Turn away. Remember, that's the last line. What a fool was I to turn away. He said, turn away means putting God on a shelf for little things, and then you realize you've wasted a whole life. It came to him at night in sleep. He woke up and wrote it down, spent 2 hours writing it down. Another time he said, when I sing that song, I'm with Divine Mother. And when I'm with Divine Mother, I don't care about anything else. This is a longer thing he himself wrote directly about the song. This is about the recording that you just heard, meaning he sung it many times. There were different recordings, but this was that specific recording. I have a confession to make. This song, which is probably my favorite of the many songs that have come to me, evolved quite by accident. The very fact that it did so is, to me, proof sufficient that none of my songs are really my own. The day before I wrote it, I had finished, as I thought, writing melodies for my album, Secrets of Love, to accompany a little book I had written by that name. I sent these melodies from Italy to a dear friend of mine in America, David Miller, who wrote a sensitive arrangement of them for several musical instruments. The next day, still uplifted in the mood that had drawn those melodies to me, I sat down at my keyboard, placed the fingers of my right hand on the keys, and simply allowed my fingers to move as they would. I went along consciously with whatever melody emerged. Almost before I knew it, the melody of this song appeared. I repeated it over and over and found that it moved me deeply. A few nights later, unable to sleep for the constant repetition of this lovely melody in my mind, I got up and wrote the following words. For a long time I wasn't able to sing this song out loud. It moved me too deeply. Even recently, when recording it in the studio for the companion album to this book, I had to make 2 or 3 attempts before I could get through the song without a break. And he did record it that way, but as you'll see from other times when Swamiji sung it in public, there's videos of it, he he had a hard time finishing it. But as Dharmini was explaining, it was all because of the bliss that he felt. It wasn't just sort of sadness, or it wasn't just emotional. It was that bliss that overcame him, and then he found it impossible. He said that very frequently, even when speaking, I feel so much bliss I can't even speak, or he would weep, and he said, and I feel like a jerk, he said. He never wanted to weep in front of people. That was his word. But he said, but he just couldn't help it because he was overflowing with that bliss. And that was what he shared with all of us, shares with all of us, and wants to share. And let us do our part to try to radiate peace, try to feel God's bliss ourselves, and share that with other people, just in silence, just with a smile, just through our meditation, our prayers for others, especially in those parts of the world that need it, as we were doing the healing prayer for those in Turkey. Let's continue that. But most of all, let's feel God's love is always with us no matter what. God bless you.